And it is time for Building Rural Wealth with Milestone Financial. Dan Miller with me this morning. Good morning, Dan.
Hey, good morning, Aaron. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Caleb Roebuck. Caleb, how are you?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing great.
7 steps to keep your estate plan up to date. Where are we going to start here, Dan?
Well, first of all, because we are talking about estate planning and, we are not attorneys, so I do want to make a quick note here. We're not estate planning attorneys. Nothing that we take today should be, construed as legal or tax advice. This is just for informational purposes only.
So let's just jump in here, Caleb. So why does it matter? Why does an estate plan matter?
Yeah, well, like Dan said, most people think of their estate as, their legal, need to talk to an attorney, their legal stuff, and it is true. But, more and more, or what we talk about, too, it's your financial estate plan as well, too, because the finances are a part of it because they all tie in. And, what that estate plan dictates is, ultimately who receives your assets, which is your financial assets that we work with people, your retirement accounts, things like that. But it's also your house, your land, any business that you might own, anything like that. And it's also a way to name, guardians for your minor children. If you're a parent, and, you should pass away, who takes care of those children. It helps reduce family conflict. Again, it's a plan to, distribute those assets basically at the end of someone's life, to those family members, and it gives instructions on how to do that. So it helps hopefully reduce that.
Mm-hmm.
And it can help with efficiency and cost savings, after somebody's passing. When somebody passes, things don't just get transferred from one person to another overnight. It is a process. There's, claim forms, things like that, estates, executors, probate, all those things. And, that can take a long time. And without, kind of some of that, planning ahead, thinking of that, there can be those increased costs and time. We tell everybody, in lack of a plan, there is a plan out there for you. Each state has a plan. It's called the probate process.
Right.
And there is ways around that. If you have a will, you name beneficiaries, you do a trust and things like that, but it does take some time. But basically, it's the whole way of how you want to dictate all that.
I don't see the downside. I mean, I just don't see the downside in trying to have your estate plan put together.
Yeah.
What's the negative in that? I don't see it. So,
and really, Aaron, there isn't one. I think it's a stigma as much as anything. Nobody wants to think about their own demise.
It's coming, though, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And so, I mean, like, for example, oftentimes when we talk about creating an estate plan, we usually start with the will. That's the thing that folks are probably the most familiar with. And basically what a will does is it directs the distribution of your assets. It can, in your will, you can also name the guardian for your minor children, like Caleb mentioned there. And so, why do you want to state that? Well, just like Caleb said, every state has what they call the laws of intestacy, and which means they got a plan for you if you don't make a plan. So you want to have your will and the other documents in place, and you should also review it, regularly. Laws and exemptions can change. That's the thing. Family circumstances can change. There can be birth of children or a death of a child or a marriage, divorce, all those things. So, when it comes to estate planning, it is not a set it and forget it type thing, And again, like I said, the rest of your financial plan may change, which can, in effect, change your estate plan. And so, we talk about the 7 pillars of financial planning, and estate planning is one of those pillars, which can be affected by the other pieces. So it all needs to be reviewed periodically.
All right. So let's talk about that. One of the things you mentioned there was beneficiaries, and we've talked about beneficiary designations in the past. The other thing is trust. So reviewing trust, reviewing your beneficiaries is an important step, right, Caleb?
Yeah. Dan kind of mentioned, with estate planning, and you mentioned, it seems easy, everybody should do it, but it is kind of complex, and there's that stigma. But this is also, things do change, and, many folks have a trust that either name beneficiaries or they have beneficiaries on their accounts, but they don't review them often enough, or they've changed, or they've grown up, or whatever, or the dollar amounts have changed on those accounts, and you think maybe differently about them. So we always encourage, first, if you have a trust, review those, tax laws, some of the other laws have changed recently, so it is good to review those. They're not set and forget it stuff too. Because those trusts can also help manage, which loved ones received which assets and when. We've all heard of spendthrift provisions. Trusts are the way kind of beyond the will that set some of those extra.
So you don't blow through it.
Yeah. Well, again,
Right.
from an financial estate planning aspect, hey, if you're passing on, generational money to some or a couple of heirs, again, you do want to make sure it's stewarded right in that.
Yes.
And sometimes you do, for maybe all or some of the beneficiaries do have to do that. So there are provisions in place. One other thing with trusts they also keep things private. Since they don't pass through the probate process, they're not, public record of who all that is. So it is a way for families, to keep assets and some of that information more private. But right along with that, with those beneficiary designations too, again, there are beneficiaries of the trust, so who are going to receive that. So you need to, look at those, but also on your retirement accounts, on your life insurance, on your maybe non-qualified brokerage accounts that you hold some stock in, your bank accounts, all those things can also have beneficiary designations or do have beneficiary designations. So, and those things, also, if they're named on your beneficiary, they will supersede what your will says. We've talked about that before.
So even though I may have a will and I may have someone designated that I want to receive this, if I don't make sure that that's properly done through my beneficiaries in those accounts and those pieces of like life insurance or retirement accounts, that's going to override the will.
Correct.
Regardless of what I say in my will.
Correct.
Important thing to know.
And that could be because you intentionally want it, or it's a complete oversight.
Or it's oversight.
Yeah.
Things change, you don't think about it, and so.
Yeah, and basically,
important.
Aaron, what that comes to, contract law supersedes that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, whenever you do a beneficiary dezgnation, that is contract
It's a
law.
contract.
You've written a contract between you and that company that
Yeah.
has said that you've made this designation. So, yeah, boy, we always talk about beneficiary designations, first line of defense when it comes to estate planning, and it really is. They've got to be correct.
All right.
Well, and along that's why they are also fairly easy to change. It's a lot easier process to sign a form and update your beneficiaries to correct it than rewrite a will or a trust
Yes.
or something like that.